Even the end of the world did not mean the end of some of the world's pre-war religions. In this video, we'll be analysing the various pre-war religions that are still in circulation within the Fallout universe. Please do note that any religions that are not mentioned is not due to disrespect, but purely due to the lack of information given on their existence in the Fallout universe. Please also be aware that these pre-war religions are within a fictional universe, and no offence is meant in their representation. Christianity is a religion that had evidently survived the Great War, as various denominations of the religion are able to be seen in the post-war world. Mormonism is one that has given a fair degree of attention to the series, given its importance to Fallout New Vegas and the Honest Hearts DLC. Mormonism seems to have survived the Great War relatively intact, as the faith has quite a large number of adherents. The city of New Canaan had been built over the ruins of Ogden, Utah by Mormons, who came to refer to themselves as New Canaanites. The New Canaanites developed a prosperous community, becoming a vital trading hub for nations such as the NCR. They also remained anchored by their religion, and continued to practice old world activities such as missionary work. Missionaries can be found in Zion, such as Daniel, and the Mojave, such as Bert Gunnison. The religion has incidentally had a large effect on the wasteland, given the actions of a Mormon missionary named Joshua Graham. While on a missionary trip to translate to the Grand Canyon tribes, he and the other members of the expedition were captured by a fairly weak tribe that was locked in conflict with more powerful ones. Unwilling to share their fate, a member of the expedition known as Edward Sallow took control and taught them advanced military tactics, which they then used to subjugate their opponents. Joshua, seeking to make the best of a bad situation, began translating for Edward, which then led to giving orders and onwards to leading in battle, training, torturing, and terrorizing. Their newfound society became known as the Legion. Edward crowned himself Kaiser, and Joshua became his legate. Joshua only regained his faith in Mormonism nearly 30 years later, but not before leading the Legion to their defeat in the First Battle of Hoover Dam. For his failure, he was burned alive and cast into the Grand Canyon by his former friend Kaiser. He returned to his former home in New Canaan, burnt and broken, and was welcomed by his old family as if he were the prodigal son. The New Canaanites, though peaceful by nature, are not pacifists. In fact, they are linked to the real world by their usage of 45 atomic pistols, which are based on Colt 1911s, which were designed by John Browning, a Mormon born in Ogden, the former name of New Canaan. Joshua refers to their usage being a rite of passage that connects New Canaanites to their ancestors 400 years prior. Unfortunately, their combat prowess did not stop the city of New Canaan from being burned to the ground. Kaiser ordered an auxiliary tribe of the Legion to assault the city. Men, women, and children were butchered where they stood, with the religion's leader, Bishop Mordecai, being burned alive in the attack. The Mormon faith still survives, however, given that many citizens had been able to evacuate and resettle in Colorado. Losing their ancestral home does not diminish their faith, as Joshua states that New Canaan is just a place, but the New Canaanites are a people, and as long as they live, their faith endures. This determination partly seems to be due to their lack of knowledge of any other surviving Christian group in the wasteland. They are under the impression that the New Canaanites are the last followers of Christ, and seek to endure because of this. Other pre-war religions based on Christianity did survive the war intact, however. In the West, it appears that many citizens still adhere to the teachings of Christ. NCR soldiers such as O'Halloran voiced their displeasure against fighting in the war due to being raised as a Christian pacifist. In earlier games, companions such as John Cassidy will make references to the Bible, as well as stating that the Garden of Eden creation kit is different from the Garden of Eden that he knows of. In the East, Amish communities are referenced to still be in existence post-war. A raider in West Virginia, named Caleb, states he was born within an Amish community, but decided to use the opportunity while on Rumspringa to leave the faith entirely. From his conversations, they seem to have weathered the end of the world quite well. They felt vindicated by their faith, and believed that their survival meant that they walked the true path. It provides an interesting insight into the status of religion in a post-war world. While some, such as Caleb, would see the devastation as proof of a lack of a god, others saw it as a fresh start in a world that they had been spared to survive within. Catholicism also seems to be evident in regions such as the capital wasteland. The Church of St. Monica is a Catholic church located in Rivet City, who worship a post-war figure known as, you guessed it, St. Monica. The themes of the church are based on the values of forgiveness, given that the saint in question had been sold into slavery by their own child, yet chosen to forgive them. The church holds on to old world practices, given that it's led by a reverend who is assisted by an acolyte. Sermons are held within the church, with Father Clifford imploring the residents of Rivet City to adhere to the values and teachings of the saint in an effort to save their souls. The concept of hell, or at least purgatory, still even holds sway, as Father Clifford warns Diego he'll spend an eternity in purgatory after being told that he slept with his secret lover, Angela. The events of Fallout 3 were at least partly influenced by Christianity as well. The mother of the Lone Wanderer was evidently a Christian, given that she had a favourite passage of the Bible, read here in the sultry tones of Liam Neeson.
I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely.
This passage had inspired Project Purity with the goal of providing free clean drinking water to the entire wasteland in an act of charity. A monastery by the name of the Abbey of the Road also seems to exist. Stated to be located west of the Commonwealth, the Abbey sends missionaries as far south as Maryland to proselytize and recruit members to their flock. Launching crusades against the forces of evil also seems to be an important doctrine. A member found by the name of Marcella had originally travelled to Point Lookout to administer the faith to the local tribals. An impressive feat indeed, considering that they're basically irradiated hillbillies. While there, she became aware of Obadiah Blackhall's attempt to locate the Kriv Bekner, an ancient tome stated to possess otherworldly powers. At what first seems like a ludicrous battle between an old man and a missionary who believes in an evil book, further examination does reveal a darker picture. The Kriv Bekner does legitimately seem to be linked to an unknown mystical power that has been seen in the Dunwich Borers of the Commonwealth and the Dunwich Building in the capital wasteland. Missionaries such as Marcella are evidently aware of its nature, as it's she who advises the location to destroy the book itself, by pressing it into an equally otherworldly obelisk found within the bowels of the Dunwich Building. The Kriv Bekner and its accompanying links to Lovecraftian horrors could easily take up an entire video on its own, so I'll save that for another time. Moving on, further evidence to the survival of pre-war religions comes from Shady Sands in the first Fallout game. Many of the town's residents, such as Katrina, Seth, and Aradesh, venerate a religious figure named Dharma. When asked on who Dharma was, Aradesh claims he was a great religious man, and is fond of quoting sayings that seem to have come from the teachings of Dharma. Interestingly, while this is a link to pre-war religion, it does seem to differ from our own world. In our universe, there was no figure named Dharma. Dharma instead is a concept within multiple religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, being derived from a Sanskrit word to maintain or uphold order. The exact definition of Dharma differs in each religion, however, so when it's referenced within Fallout, we're unable to ascertain which religion in particular may have been the primary influence. The quotes of the figure known as Dharma do seem to follow the teachings of bringing order, righteousness, and peace, such as, "The farmer who plants politeness will walk easy when the season is over," or "Those who tend their own flock know the shepherd." The fact that characters reference Dharma as a religious figure could stem from either two reasons. 1. Within the Fallout universe itself, there was a religious figure named Dharma who'd founded a religion aligned with the teachings of our real-world Dharmic religions. Or 2, as is often the case within Fallout, the true meaning of Dharma had become lost, and the residents of the wasteland created their own characters and meaning. Dharma is a word used to describe the teachings of the Buddha, so it could be that Aradesh and the other Shady Sands residents had misinterpreted Dharma as the religious figure itself, rather than being a concept of the religion. As a segue, misinterpretation has led to other pre-war figures being idolized as religious icons. Within Freeside, New Vegas, a gang can be found called the Kings, who venerate an unknown figure known only as the King. The Kings differ from other wasteland groups. They aren't a loose band of cutthroats looking to make a buck or start fights. They instead follow an anarchist philosophy based on the idea that every man is free to follow his own path and do his own thing. Every man is a king in his own right. The King is obviously a reference to Elvis Presley, since the gang imitate the man himself in nearly every way possible, from their dress sense, hair, style of speaking, to the fact they have a whiteboard instruction on how to make Elvis's favourite sandwich. The Kings emulate the man and try to live their life according to his rules. While it could be a bit of a stretch to list it as a religion, their leader, known also as the King, makes a pretty good case for why it is. When asked about the title of their headquarters, known as the King's School of Impersonation, he states that,
"Near as I can tell, it was some sort of religious institution. Oh, I know it says school out front, but everything in here seems to be related to the worship of some guy from back in the day. People used to come here to learn about him, to dress like him, move like him, to be him. If that's not worship, I don't know what is."
Ironically, the kings were never able to know the name of their idol, since all the posters of Elvis they could find mentioned him only as the king. This in itself added to the mystique and his veneration as a religious icon. Another pre-war religion encountered in Fallout 76 is that of the Mothman. Years before the Great War, stories circulated of a horrifying creature haunting the area around the town of Point Pleasant. The creature was stated to be an abomination, a disturbing hybrid of man and moth. While tourists flocked to the region to visit the location, the broader scientific community dismissed the theory of a half-man, half-moth to be absurd, except for a pocket of crazies. A mixed collection of individuals formed together, united by their belief in the Mothman as a real divine being, and thus the cult of the Mothman was born. Believing in his divinity, the cult prayed and conducted rituals in his honor, seeking blessings of immortality and visions of the future. Most notably, the day before the Great War, the cult practiced a ritual, after which a member stated that a vision from the Mothman had warned them of an incoming great flood. Seemingly disregarding the instructions to seek higher ground, they instead sought shelter in the Lucky Hole mine, creating shrines and effigies to their mothy god. The cult was therefore able to survive the atomic war that had devastated much of the world within their new home. Interestingly, while in the Lucky Hole mine, the group seemed to have made contact with an almost Lovecraftian horror and the interloper. I'll cover this more in depth in another video, but ultimately, even interacting with a cosmic horror was not enough to shake the faith of some of its members. Since 2103, the cultists left their cavernous refuge to return to the original grounds of the Mothman, declaring it to be Holy Land. The cultists are hostile to all unbelievers, and ask the Mothman to give them the strength to strike them down before the day of reckoning comes. It's undeniably wacky that a religion was formed on the worship of a divine moth that was stated to have predicted the end of the world. What's even wackier is that the Mothman can actually be found. While it doesn't appear to be a godlike being, it is legitimately a large humanoid moth, which seems to indicate that the pre-war local legends of the being were true. It's unknown what level of intelligence the creature has, where it came from, or if there is more than one Mothman. The fact that Mothman eggs are able to be found gives evidence that there's probably more than one, and most notably, that there maybe is a moth woman out there. Of all the religions in Fallout, I found the cult of the Mothman to just be the funniest, since it's a group of people who legitimately worship a big moth. And finally, the last of the pre-war religions is that of Hubology. Founded in pre-war times by a science fiction writer Dick Hubble, Hubology was a pre-war religion that shares a great deal of similarity with a certain other religion in our world. The creators of Fallout have submitted disclaimers, however, stating that any similarities are purely coincidental, and so do I. Followers of the religion are called Hubologists, and refer to their founder Dick Hubble as the Hub. Essentially, they believe that human beings are plagued by neurodynes, caused both by the spirits of the dead and people who don't support Hubology, who are known as suppressors. The Hubologists are able to remove neurodynes via a cleansing process known as alignment, which is essentially done by exposing them to radiation. The removal of neurodynes frees the individual to their true potential, and allows them to obtain abilities and talents that previously had been suppressed. Due to the source of neurodynes being inescapable, constant alignment sessions are needed to keep oneself pure of their influence. Hubologists believe that the Hub made contact with a being known as the Starfather long ago, who lives on a distant planet, Quetzal. The Starfather is the source of life on Earth, who will allow the true faithful to live with him on his home planet, where they are forever saved from neurodynes. They then will return to Earth to rule over mankind, to end the influence of neurodynes once and for all, and guide the rest of mankind to its full potential. Interestingly, Dick Hubble, the founder, must have had at least some form of contact with aliens seen in the Fallout game, known as Zetans. The reward for assisting his descendant Dara in Fallout 4 is a weapon said to have been passed down from generation to generation, which is evidently a Zetan alien blaster. And with that, we've reached the end of the pre-war religions that had survived the Great War. There were many real-world religions that again were left out, not by intention, but purely due to the fact that the games give no knowledge of their current status. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and please let me know if there are any other examples that I'd missed.